represent the power of the centrifugal force. Without fighting the principles of nature, Aikido aligns itself with it, and in a natural synergistic energy, Aikido manages to diffuse the power of the attack, allowing the Aikido practitioner to handle and control the opponent. That is the essence of Aikido. Aikido is a martial art that incorporates traditional martial techniques to fortify both mind and body. Created and founded by Morihei Ueshiba, commonly referred to as O-sensei, Aikido's origin dates back to 1920, when O-sensei opened a dojo named Ueshiba Juku in Ayabe, Kyoto, Japan. Starting very young, O-sensei went through hard training of various martial arts. As he gained a deeper understanding of those martial arts, he increasingly started to have doubts about those that were only focused on winning or defeating the opponent. O-sensei felt an urge to look for a way that, through Budo, martial arts practitioners could learn to help or respect each other. He continued to struggle with the thought as to which way would be the best to train the mind in order to perfect personal qualities. In 1931, an Aikido dojo, Kobukan, was established in what is now the current location of the Aikido headquarters. In 1941, O-sensei also founded an outdoor dojo in Iwama. Currently, this is the location where the Aiki shrine is located. O-sensei continued his hard training and, with the help of numerous people, created the current form of Aikido. After his passing in 1969, his wishes were carried by the second Doshu, Kishomaru Ueshiba, and Aikido disseminated all over Japan, as well as over 80 nations throughout the world. Aikido techniques can be broadly categorized into several groups. Throwing techniques, nagewaza, pinning methods, katamewaza, both throwing and pinning combinations, nage katamewaza, and weapon-taking techniques, bukitoriwaza. All of these skills are built on the concept that one can counter attacks from strikes, thrusts, and grabs without hurting the opponent, and eventually controlling the opponent and his advances. First of all, let's take a look at some of the basic techniques. In this format, we will define that the person who initiates a technique with the Japanese word uke, and the person who counteracts the approach as tori. Shoumen uchi iriminage. Uke steps forward on the right foot and delivers a shoumen attack with his right tegatana. Tori slides in with the left foot and reaches for uke's neck and controls tegatana. Tori pivots on the left foot and breaks uke's balance, and stepping forward with the right foot forms an arc with his right arm, which cuts down to bring uke to the ground. Gyaku hanmi, katate tori, shihou nage omote. Uke grabs Tori's left wrist with his right hand. Tori moves forward, counter-grabbing the wrist of the uke and gradually raising the left arm in a spiral mode. Tori makes a big step forward while raising the arm and using the right foot as a pivot, turns around and cuts down to finish the throw. Gyaku hanmi, katate tori, shihou nage ura. Uke grabs Tori's right wrist with his left hand. Tori slides towards the outer side of the uke. Using the right foot, Tori makes a major pivot while taking hold of uke's wrist with both hands. Tori turns around the outer side of the uke steps while forward with the left foot and cuts down to complete the throw. As shown in these examples, with Aikido you can apply these techniques to both omote and ura. Shoumenuchi daikyo omote. Uke steps forward and delivers a shomen strike with his right tegatana. Tori also steps forward with the right foot as Tori controls the elbow of uke with the left hand, which then raises the right tegatana. This allows Tori to stop and position himself to grab uke's right wrist. Tori takes a major step forward with the left foot while cutting down the uke's right arm. Tori will bring the uke down by entering to the left and then stepping forward to the right, which eventually breaks the balance of the uke. Tori's left knee is placed just under the right armpit of the uke, and the right knee will be placed by the uke's right wrist. Shoumenuchi daikyo ura. As uke steps forward and delivers a shomen strike with his right tegatana, Tori steps with the left foot forward to the right side of uke. Tori then controls the elbow of uke with the left hand and raises the right tegatana. This allows Tori to stop and position himself to grab uke's right wrist. Using the left foot as a pivot, Tori turns while cutting down on uke's right arm, which brings uke to the ground. As was done in omote, Tori's left hand pins uke's right elbow, right hand pins uke's right wrist. Let's take a look at omote and ura.
And that's omote and ura for now, ladies and gentlemen. Let me go back to the lights tech. On. Let's go back. On. There we go. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go. Thank you for being here, and thanks for the hanging in there with the extended time. And I saw a couple folks wandering into Twilight Auditorium rather than Dana, so we'll sort of rope a couple of them back in a couple of minutes. My name is Jonathan Miller-Lane, Assistant Professor, Teacher Education Program. This is our keynote piece of the Liberal Arts Martial Arts Symposium that we're doing over these 4 days of this week. And it wouldn't be possible, and it's really important to thank a couple other departments and folks here on campus. The Academic Enrichment Fund, Wanacott Commons, Classics Department, Philosophy Department, Japanese Department, and the Student Aikido Club have all contributed generously to making this symposium happen this week and bringing Professor and Sensei Donald Levine here to Middlebury College. Now, Professor Levine has been and was the Peter B. Ritzma Professor of Sociology at the University of Chicago, an institution that has taken and absorbed over 4 decades of his life, and to which he has given over 4 decades of his life. He is retiring after a distinguished career as a scholar, as a teacher, and also as an activist. And throughout this career, Professor Levine was heavily involved in undergraduate life and in the undergraduate curriculum. He was Dean of the Undergraduate College for 5 years in the 1980s, from 82 to 87. And if you were to go back and take a look at some of his work 4 decades ago in the 60s, to really re-examine the undergraduate curriculum and imagine what it should be at a liberal arts college, I think you might find some novel and powerful ideas that still vibrate and that still inform what is happening at that university. As a scholar, Professor Levine has published widely on classical social theory, liberal education, and conflict theory, as well as on the nation and country of Ethiopia. But we asked Professor Levine here today, and rather than go through that list of scholarship, I want to touch on another avenue of his scholarship that is really the pivotal piece of this whole idea and this symposium. And that's the intersection of the liberal arts and the martial arts. Now, in 1983, Professor Levine presented a speech in Woodward Court at the University of Chicago entitled The Liberal Arts and the Martial Arts. And fortunately for us who weren't there, it was published. And that piece, published also in liberal education as well as a number of other places, has really been the seminal piece for all of us in higher ed and even in the K-12 world, who have been interested in making these links between the body and mind in an academic setting, and particularly the liberal arts and martial arts in particular. That 84 essay remains a pivotal work of scholarship for all of us. He added to that 5 years later in 1989 a piece that some of you have also read on conflict theory and Aikido, in which he talked about his attempt to walk his talk by actually creating a course at the University of Chicago which would combine the very ideas that he wrote about and talked about in 1984. On top of that, there is Aiki Extensions, an extraordinary organization that Professor Levine also founded. And that is really starting to take off in so many different directions. And it is an organization committed to applying the practice and principles of Aikido in venues outside of conventional dojo settings. And this effort has taken Professor Levine to dojos across the country and around the world. Last year, and now I'll bring him up onto the stage here in just a moment, Professor Levine published Powers of the Mind, the Reinvention of Liberal Learning in America. And that, too, I think, is essential reading for any of us interested in liberal arts education writ large, but any of us who are interested in continuing to work on this body-mind connection. We have copies of that book signed that Professor Levine will sign, normally on sale for $42, but we're being offered the Middlebury College discount, so it's $30 today, okay? And that Professor Levine's book is here. It's been reviewed in both the New York Review of Books, Teachers College Record, as well as several other places. And while all of them have really embraced this book, particularly because of the manner in which he chronicles the story of the liberal arts at the University of Chicago, but also in the way he takes the risk of projecting a new model for it. But I think all these reviewers are missing a critical point, and maybe it's because they don't know what to do with it. And that is that he is in this text offering a way to actually reimagine the liberal arts with this body, all of our bodies, having a place in that liberal arts curriculum. And I think for many reviewers, they mention it, but they haven't yet really got their heads around the implications of what he's actually proposing and what he is doing in this book. For those of us who are interested in doing that, once again, Professor Levine is leading the way. He led the way in 1984, and with 2006, this text is leading the way with the same vision again. Personally and professionally, it gives me great pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce Professor Donald Levine to hear all of us here at Middlebury College, and please join me in welcoming him to the stage.
What a pleasure to be here at Middlebury College, a place that distinctively takes education seriously. There aren't many places like that in this country. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here and hosted by my long-term junior colleague, Jonathan Miller-Lane. I also appreciate your patience and flexibility in having this event rescheduled to a later time. This is the second time in 24 hours that I've had experienced a lecture being rescheduled. Yesterday, I was very excited to have tickets to hear a major new foreign policy address by Senator Barack Obama, my neighbor and colleague in Chicago. And it had to be rescheduled because of the tragic events at Virginia Tech, as so many governmental functions were canceled yesterday in D.C. This rescheduling is not connected with so serious a matter. I just screwed up and didn't leave enough time to get to the airport this morning, despite my wife's constant admonition and to my chagrin. And so I really feel very humiliated by that, frankly. But as a longtime practitioner in the martial arts, you know, we say nothing's a mistake. So I've learned from it, and usually mistakes like that always happen when you're just a little too cocky and not paying attention. Even so, the rescheduling, this little hint of disjunction fits with the mood of yesterday. Makes a, what's going on here? What's this disjunction all about? And I'm not going to try to present any facile gloss on that horrible episode. Each of us will do well to use this time to reflect, to return to our center, to attend to what we think and feel on the way. On the other hand, I shall not pretend that what I intend to talk about with you today does not have some bearing on all of that. The title of my talk, I take it, has been posted as The Liberal Arts and the Martial Arts Revisited. All right. So that directs your attention to the paper that Jonathan kindly referred to that was given in 1983 at a college public lecture at the University of Chicago. And it was a fluke kind of thing. This distinguished lecture series, they said, come on, Dean of the College, say something. I said, I don't know, what should I say? But I had just entered my 4th year of training in the martial arts, and when you have been training for about 3-4 years, you start to get some inkling of what it may be all about. And I said, okay, how about the liberal arts and the martial arts? And I mentioned this to a neighbor that I was planning to do this. And he says, oh, that's like giving a lecture on Lincoln, man and car. And I said, wait a minute. So I had to make the case. Yeah, it got picked up. The paper was published and then got picked up by the New York Times. And thanks to that, a whole set of developments took place that I want to briefly describe, partly because they show how one little kind of incidental or accidental achievement can have long-term consequences. So every one of you could do something that, down the pike could have really interesting ramifications. In this particular case, I would say there were 3 main ramifications. For one thing, as Jonathan mentioned, it led to my creation of a course. Yeah, I said the martial arts have relevance for the liberal arts, and so make good on that. So I got a course which I first offered in 1986, in which half of the work of the course was on the mat training in Aikido. That was pretty revolutionary then. I've got news for you. It still is revolutionary. And people asked me, how in the world did you ever get administrative approval for such a weird kind of course? And I said, well, I just had a frank heart-to-heart talk with the dean one night while I was lying in bed. And so I authorized the course, I taught it, and I said, hey, this is more fun than being dean. I did not take a second term, and I taught the course for 20 years. In preparation for this talk, I asked one of my assistants to send around to some of the students who took the course and ask them, on a scale of 1 to 10, as compared to other classes you took as an undergraduate, how important was this course to you as an educational experience? And this was not a terribly systematic, this was a very last-minute thing, but we got, you know, a good handful of responses. And one of the responses was, interesting question. In terms of my degree, it was useless. It was definitely a wonderful experience, though. And some of the others said, not only did this class challenge me intellectually and physically, it challenged on a deeper level. I was challenged as a human being in the universe and forced to consider something deeper than just concepts. I think this was a class that challenged me on a moral level. And I won't read many more, but let me just say that one said, I was able in this class to feel profoundly the explicit and implicit connection between what we were reading and what we did on the mat, our discussions with each other in the classroom, and our training with each other, the flexibility of our minds as we grappled with concepts, and the pliability of our bodies as we blended with the principles of Aikido. This was a very powerful course, and so forth. I have had students, whatever their majors say, this was the course that meant the most to me in my whole undergraduate experience. And I think that really does suggest something worth keeping in mind as we think about liberal education, our time, and the future of the liberal arts. On a scale of 1 to 10, we asked, how important do you think it is for courses of this sort to be offered more widely in American colleges? And then it was off the charts, even if they didn't like my course that much. Introducing students to the idea of a body-mind connection adds a dimension to learning that would otherwise be lost, no matter how rigorous intellectually the curriculum. It challenges students to reflect in a way that would be difficult, if not impossible, to convey in a conventional classroom setting. And another one wrote, this is uber important for our young people today. In my opinion, for American students to be able to understand on a body level what it means to have an idea and to delve into an issue would help them, I think, to view their worlds in a different way, etc., etc. So that was one stream of development that came out of this lecture, the liberal arts and the martial arts. I taught it for 20 years, and it has generations of interesting alumni. The second thing that came out of that course was, out of that paper rather, well, let me just say one thing about the course. It did then lead to the sequel paper, the liberal arts, what's it called? Martial arts as a resource for liberal learning, the case of Aikido. And in the first paper I said, here is what the martial arts have to offer as a way of clarifying, challenging, enriching our thinking about the liberal arts. The second paper, I said, what do the liberal arts have to do with challenging how we think about and teach Aikido? Because as a martial arts, for example, as a martial art, they are traditionally taught in a highly authoritarian manner, but if you want people to be free, independent thinkers, you don't want them to be subjected to a highly authoritarian regime. You want them also to have generality of concepts and understandings, and martial arts traditionally are highly particularistic. You are very attached to your teacher, you are very attached to the lineage. It gets very sectarian. You know, in traditional China, you went and set foot in some other master's place, you might have your arm cut off. So that kind of thing. So there's a back and forth there that I tried to explore. That paper also then gave some responses from students in the early versions of the course. All right, so the course was one thing that came out of it. Second was the not-for-profit organization that I founded 8 or 9 years ago called Aikido Extensions. And that was just an effort to get a dozen or so people who were, like myself, kind of out on a limb all by ourselves, looking at ways to apply this fascinating practice of Aikido. It's hard for outsiders to grasp what it is, and frankly, I think it takes a while of practice to begin to grasp. But I will say, one of the American senseis who studied in Japan with the founder, Mary Heine Sensei, she went to Japan to study Japanese language and literature as I think a Stanford undergraduate. Was it? Well, University of Washington undergraduate. And she was all gung-ho. And she set foot in the dojo, and she saw the founder doing his thing. And she said, I've got to follow that. I've got to do that. So okay. Don't get me so sentimental. But, anyhow, I had been training for a whole bunch of years, and I thought, hey, this stuff is so good, it should be shared with people who aren't crazy enough to go and train 3-4 times a week in a hardship dojo. That's one of the reasons I concocted the course, because in 10 weeks, I boiled down the practices and principles to a 10-week module, said, here it is, and after that, without any expectation, and most of them did not continue to train in Aikido, and they had a good experience. But there are other aspects of it. And Aikido Extensions then went on to develop these everywhere from body work, psychotherapy, conflict resolution, family mediation, youth outreach, working with psychiatrically disabled populations, and most recently, international conflict resolution. And I hope we can, at the end of my talk, show a very short 8 to 10 minute video of one of the most important achievements of Aikido Extensions, which is bringing 100 Aikidoka, Arabs and Jews from Israel, Arabs from Iraq, Jordan, Palestine, Greeks and Turks, who hate each other worse than Arabs and Jews, by the way, and Bosnians and Serbians, North and South Cypriots. We brought them together for 4 days on Cyprus and Nicosia, which is the one militarily divided city left in Europe, and this DVD is a kind of snapshot of what happened there. That's the second thing. The third thing is what got eventually embodied in my new book. And yes, you are getting a special Middlebury College discount if you want it. This is the last set that are about all sold out before the new printing. Powers of the Mind. And Powers of the Mind is the first book by a reasonably well-known American educator that advocates and argues for the incorporation of body-mind learning as part of the liberal curriculum of the future. And so, relatedly then, the third thing that comes out of this is a whole rethinking, a fresh thinking, a continuing development over 20 years of my thought about Aikido and liberal education. I'm going to pause, see if anyone has any thoughts, questions about what I've said so far before I go into the main part of what I have to present, which is how does body-mind practice impact, what impact can it have on intellectual function? Anybody have any questions or thoughts about what I've said so far? Yeah. Hey!
There we go.
I blew out my knee like 2 years ago, right?
You what?
I blew out my knee 2 years ago. How is somebody who is like me, disabled or anything like that, able to get your points across, the understanding of Aikido without doing all your mat work? Because it's not so extensive in your course.
I had people who had injuries, and I always tell my students, principle number one in martial arts is respect. The founder said, what's the most important thing in martial arts training? Every day, everything, respect. So I said, three things you respect. You respect the other, you respect yourself, you respect the dojo, the place where you train. As it turns out, in my view, the dojo is the whole world. So, okay. So respect yourself means you don't do anything that is injurious to yourself. So if you can't sit seiza, you stand. If you can't fall down, you don't fall down. I'm thinking of starting a course called Aikido for mature adults, 50 to 100. And frankly, I don't think a whole lot of them are going to be able to take falls. So that's the flashy side of Aikido. I was at a 3-day seminar just a week or so ago in Washington in honor of the 70th birthday of my main teacher. And there were 200 of us in a place about this big. Okay. So do you think anybody was taking falls there? I don't think so. Okay? All right. Other questions? Let me just say one other thing about that. O-sensei, the founder, said, I'm not teaching you how to move your feet. I'm teaching you how to move your mind. So, whatever you've got left in your body, the body is important because the mind is part of the body. But whatever you've got going for you in your body, you can practice with to change your mind. Okay? All right. Anything else? Yes, please.
Do you feel like this connection is only made in Aikido? That there isn't the same mind-body connection that could be made elsewhere? Or is it just not as conscious and on the surface?
I see Aikido as lying on a continuum. At one end of the continuum is meditation, Zen or any other form of meditation. Okay. Next is yoga. Next is Tai Chi. Next is Aikido. Okay. So each of them really has broadly similar objectives. As you go down or across the continuum, you add a dimension of movement. Okay? So you add a dimension of movement. Yoga, you hold the pose, you hold the asana. Tai Chi, okay, in place. You train a long while, you get to do push hands. Aikido from the beginning is you're working with someone else. I've done all four. I prefer Aikido because as a professor, I'm sitting a lot in my office or the library. So I like to move, and also I like what is, I think, unique about Aikido in that is the interpersonal dimension. And we'll talk about that in a moment. Yeah. Okay? Any follow-up on that?
Yeah, well, do you feel that then, if it's on a continuum, that you can enter at any part and still move forward? Like you could start with just being bodily and not connecting that to the mind and then moving forward. So you can start with something like a regular martial art and then move into something that's...
All right. Other martial arts, that's very tricky. If you have really enlightened teaching of, say, karate, which you don't very often get, you can get very close to what Aikido has to offer. Not all the way. You can maybe get 80%. What Aikido has distinctively as compared with Taekwondo, Karate, Judo, etc., is the techniques of taking care of the other person. What happens to you inside can be very similar. But what happens, please, if he throws a punch at me, okay, so, ha! He's dead, right? Okay, so he throws a punch at me, punch. That's different. But there's an awful lot that's similar. Okay? I saw another hand. Yes. Pardon?
Would dance be on that continuum?
I think so. If dance is taught well, properly, yeah. See, the whole thing. And I want to say also that Aikido can be taught. There's what I personally call YMCA Aikido. Okay? YMCA Aikido. There are plenty. You find it. Especially in Japan. Japan has lost a lot of the spiritual dimension of Aikido that the founder had in mind. In fact, he said the future of Aikido is in the United States. So this is where, and it's in France, and it's in many places. But you can do mechanical, physical routines in Aikido too, as you can in dance. But dance improv. Do you know dance improv? All right. Dance improv was inspired by Aikido, historically, yes. And it's very similar. Very similar. Okay. All right. So, why don't we... Okay. It's frustrating how much I want to cover, how little... If I do that, it's too much. So I've got 5 points, okay? And so to keep myself remembering them, I made it A, B, C, D, E. So what did I have A stand for? Always prehend or apprehend. I like the word prehend. Alfred North Whitehead, philosopher, used prehending. But apprehending is related. All right, so kind of taking in what's out there. So this one, I want you all to do this exercise where you're sitting, okay? I want you to look at the stage, and you stay there, please, Jonathan, and I'll be here. And I want you to tighten your shoulders and real intently try to see what's happening up here on the stage, okay? Okay, everybody there? All right, now, let your shoulders relax. Let your belly get soft. Let your tongue be soft against the bottom of your mouth. Open your eyes wide and then just let them come to a normal position. Any difference? How many people have a different range of perception? Anybody? It's one of you. So, Johnston, what you take in perceptually, what you prehend of the world, visually, also hearing, taste, everything. I don't know what it's like here. Students on my campus, this is how they go. Did anybody do that?
No?
No?
Never seen that.
All right. I use this story in my class to drive the point home because a couple girls were going across the street like this and a car came and killed them. That happens. Be aware. Open up. Notice. You can't do that if you're... So the state of your body affects your entire perceptual function. Okay? That's point 1. Point 2, B. B stands for bad habits. All right. So you can get pretty far with a discourse on habit and talking about martial arts generally. One of the books I would really like all students of Aikido to read is John Dewey's Human Nature and Conduct, where he talks about habits and implicitly gives you a kind of entree into what arguably could be called bad habit. I would say, all right, for purposes here, let's say there are three kinds of bad habits. Okay, one is the habit of thinking you don't have habits or can do without them. Okay, and so in terms of intellectual response, it's who's your favorite author? One of your authors you
Let's stick with Dewey.
Dewey, okay. Tell me what's so good about Dewey.
He challenges you to rethink what you're thinking, to open your mind about what you can see.
So you think Dewey's one of the important philosophers? Well, that's just your opinion. Anybody ever hear somebody respond like that? All the time. High school sophistication. No firm argument is worth taking seriously. Some years ago, I'm trying to enter a class of graduate students in sociology. How many of you think that there's any kind of cumulative advance in social science? Not one. Zero. I said, oh, that's interesting. Then why should I take anything you write seriously? All right. So the physical counterpart of this is, say, the couch potato. That's flabby, folks. That's flabby. And if you want to know what's wrong with the young people of this country, forget about the old folks. They're beyond redemption. It's flabbiness. Okay? You have a lot of obesity that is not determined by metabolic and genetic issues, overweight, underdeveloped, no good physical habits. Mental habits follow physical habits. Physical habits follow mental habits. So the bad habit number one is anything goes. What the? Okay? Bad habit number two is something that does injury to yourself or someone else. I'm not going to give a long philosophical justification of it, but that's all I'm going to say. Bad habit number three, and this is where Dewey's argument really gets important. Because Dewey says habits are essential for normal human functioning. If you didn't have habits, you couldn't really survive. The habits that he'd like you to cultivate are ones that aren't injurious to yourself or others. The most important thing is, I'm going to do a cross-hand grab, and you're going to do an Ikkyo on me. Great. Okay, we'll do it on the other side. Okay. He still wants to do the Ikkyo. Keep coming, man. Keep coming. It's not working. So he's got that one habit. Okay? He's got that one habit of doing this particular move. But then, says Dewey, the reason that we start thinking is that an old habit isn't going to work. So then at that point, thinking says, hey, I've got a problem here. A problem is a conflict. I want to do this and he won't let me. So I do something else. So embodying that is very powerful. People who have a rigid idea that works for some things, like economists, that works for some things, then try to put it into areas where it can't possibly work. One of my favorite lines about economists is I say, no department of economics could function for a month if economists behaved the way economists say people behave. Okay, so that's the embodying good habits. A good habit, first of all, is a habit. Okay, it's not a slouch potato. A good habit is I can use a hammer properly, I can play scales properly, I can take photographs properly. I avoid things that are going to be injurious, like drug addictions or shooting people randomly. I avoid those things. And I learn how, when anything I'm attached to runs into a problem, to be flexible. Now, I'm going to tell you something about John Dewey that very few people know. In fact, it's in my new book. I'm going to read it to you. Because John Dewey used to suffer from some kind of back problem, and he went to one of the geniuses in somatic education of our century, an Australian who went to England named F.M. Alexander, and he took lessons with Alexander in New York, and that changed his life. And he took lessons for many years. In fact, he wrote the foreword to 2 or 3 of Alexander's books. And he was very upset at the end of his life that not one of his students took seriously his interest in Alexander and the somatic learning that he had. They thought, oh, the old man, that's his crazy hobby or idiosyncratic thing. But well, I'll just read a couple footnotes. Dewey would later acknowledge that his theories of using the mind to control bodily action derived crucial support from Alexander's work. This would be clear to any reader of Human Nature and Conduct at all familiar with the Alexander technique. Dewey's illustration in Chapter 1 of the difficulty of changing posture just by willing requires explicit reference to Alexander, as does his relentless critique of the current separation of body and mind. Somatic educator Thomas Hanna has written, quotes, "What Dewey learned and extolled in the Alexander technique was how it solved the physiological problem by experimentally interrupting a habitual pattern and then sensing its several components in order to enrich one's awareness of what one is unconsciously doing." Oh my gosh, no, damn it! I'm gonna throw this guy. Oh, wait, what's going on here? Wait, I'm trying to do something that isn't working. Why do I want to do that? Oh, because I'm trying to get him down. But that's not working. So what else could I do? Well, I don't know. Something else. Okay? Is that clear? All right. Dewey said that it was thanks to this understanding that he gained from his work with Alexander that he learned how to listen to others and change his mind. He says most philosophers get a fixed idea in their youth and hold on to it for the rest of their life. So it's this question of getting a good intellectual habit and then riding with it forever versus getting a habit that's good in two senses. One, it does good things, and B, it's capable of being challenged, of being altered, of being revised, of being modified by the influx of other habits. All right, C. Conduct of inquiry. Okay, inquiry is another one of Dewey's big terms, and it's what you all should do sometime or other. And yeah, just looking into something. But inquiry or expression, and you have a project, okay? So in Aikido, the person who attacks, who's called uke, or in the picture, has a project, okay? So say that Jonathan's project is, he's going to cut right through this difficult logical conundrum, okay? He's going to cut right through it, okay? So here he comes. Ha! But along the way, I'm going to throw him. What's going on there? He has this perfectly good project. I'm going to cut right through the conundrum. But along the way, he runs into something that won't let him do it that way. And so he shifts and does something else. That is a central kind of thing that I think Aikido practice facilitates. You really need to embody it some way or other. You can do it in meditation by giving up attachments, but physically to have the experience of he's coming, he's going to grab me because his project is to grab me and to knee me, but something happened along the way and he does something else. Okay, thank you. ABC. Okay, always prehend or apprehend. B, watch out for bad habits. C, conduct of inquiry. The physical experience of running into obstacles and then shifting. One of the other great somatic educators, genius in somatic investigation, Moshe Feldenkrais, who started out as a judo practitioner and then had some knee problem, I think it was, and diagnosed himself and figured out, what to do, and ended up inventing the Feldenkrais method. And Feldenkrais, how do I get onto that? What was I talking about? Changing? D. No, I'm not ready for D. C, conduct of inquiry. Well, Feldenkrais says, figure out what's happening in your body and your mind. It's going to be similar. It'll come to me in a moment.
Confronting obstacles?
Confronting obstacles, yeah. sorry, it'll come back. All right, D. D is for dialogue. Okay. Now, you all think dialogue's easy. All right, dialogue's a fancy word for conversation. You all think conversation's easy, right? Who thinks conversation's easy? I think it's the hardest thing there's. I'm thinking of Dewey also. I don't know why Dewey's on my mind today, but Dewey said, of all things, communication is the most wonderful. It's the most wonderful, it's the most difficult. One of the things I've been interested in is exploring, sources of interethnic antagonism and fights. And also in Ethiopia, I've been there recently, and how they've had chances to move ahead one time after another, 1960, 74, 91, 2005, and each time it breaks down because of a failure of communication. But I thought you would understand, or that's what they say, but that's not really what they mean, etc., etc. So, dialogue, conversation. All right. So let's go back to Kosadori. Here. Okay. No, let's start with pushing. So, I don't know if have you done? Yeah. Okay. So here, no, there. Okay. So here I'm saying what I have to say. This is what I have to say to you, Jonathan, and now I'm just about out of... Oh, now you have something to say. Okay. All right. Well, now I have something to say. Yeah. Oh, I see. All right. So we get this experience of sensing. Let him say... Look, if I right now say, look, Jonathan, I have something to say. No. Let him say it. And then I go. And then at the same time, what we're doing is I'm inhaling and I'm exhaling. So I'm inhaling and I'm exhaling. Okay. So when he same time, when he grabs, okay, so I receive it, and then I gather in. When you write a paper, do you go to the computer and just start typing away? Some of you do. I know that. I've been there. I have. All right, so
not here at Middlebury.
Not here. No. All right. You collect. You inhale. The master metaphor of my book is inhaling and exhaling. And powers of the mind, I enumerate 8, and the first 4 are powers of inhaling, of prehension. Taking in visible things, taking in kinesthetic sensations, taking in text, the meanings of text, taking in worlds, and then having a self, developing a self that enables you to express and to interpret and to form unities. And finally, hardest of all, communicate. Tell me now, how many of your courses that you've taken focus on the capacity to communicate effectively? With one another. With one another. Or with an author, for starters. Very easy, huh? You read a book. Oh, look, that guy's a racist pig, or this one is wrong on those facts, so you can't take him seriously. No. Take in. And then, don't be overwhelmed. Back. The next time you are writing a paper, pay attention to what's going on in your body. Are you giving yourself time to take in all that you need? All the facts, but not just facts. Are you listening to the point of view of the other? Are you reading the author with the intent to understand the author's agenda before you impose your agenda on the author? So, all right, so now, so now cross hands. So I'm going to do this, and now he sees that there is an opening here, and he's going to reverse it. And I see that there's an opening, and so we're kind of learning from each other. And I think, why is he able to? I keep giving him these openings, so there must be something that I'm doing this. Oh, now he's not coming up. I figured out what it is. Everybody get that? Want to see it again? I'm not going to tell you when it happens. So here, darn it. Oh, but he's got an interesting point there. But look, I think I really am in the right here. Whoops. Well, I can't be completely in the right that way, but if I do this, maybe I can take into account his point, and then we'll have a resolution of that. But in Aikido, we take turns. Okay, so I'm helping him learn. He's helping me learn. Okay. So you think you can figure out what will get me down? Not yet, you haven't.
How could that possibly be?
That's better. Okay. All right, thank you. So we help each other learn. Conversation. One of the great figures in my book about liberal learning is Robert Redfield, professor of anthropology at the University of Chicago, who said, education is conversation about the meaning of life as each sees some part of it on behalf of everyone. I like that. E. What was E? E was dialogue. E. This is kind of fun. I just thought of that. E, and then we're done. Elicit responses. Okay, if I want to communicate, I want to do more than tell him what I say and respond to that. I want to find out something. So if I give him my hand, now we'll go to cross-hand now. If I give him my hand like this, okay, then I'm going to go for this kind of a response. He's eliciting. No, wait. Is this right? Okay, yes, that's right. When I give him my hand like this, he's going to grab me here. See? When I give him my hand like this, I'm going to get a different response, because that's not going to work going around so much. The response is grabbing here, and when he does that, then I do something different. So tell me what you think about Dewey versus tell me what you think about Vermont maple syrup. So when we face each other, for example, what do you suppose he's going to do when I do this? What do you suppose he's going to do when I do this? When I do this. There you go. What do you suppose he's going to do when I do this? Okay? So I'm eliciting from him. I learn to elicit responses as part of the dance of communication, conversation. Our time up? Yeah, our time. So, okay, questions, and I would love to show the tab DVD. You'll really appreciate seeing this. But any questions on what I presented? And then those of you who will be at the class tonight on the mat, I'll show in more detail that has to do with Aikido moves. some of the things I'm talking about and a lot of the things I haven't gotten to. Last question. Do we have a projector? Yeah.
What would be the difference in the last thing between eliciting a response and provoking a response?
Very good question. Not necessarily right, but provoking has a kind of edge or overtone of being combative. And a lot of people, the American mode is debate. So you want to have a debate about a subject, and of course people are schooled to do A side and B side, and they fight each other, and one side wins and the other loses. That is a lot of what goes on in public discourse. All right, we'll come back in a minute. But this is important because in Aikido we avoid combat. The founder said, in Aikido there are no enemies. The only victory is the victory over yourself. If you try to defeat the other, you're already lost. And I can show that. One more. So he's going to give me a punch from that side. So he's going to defeat me by giving me a punch. And do you see what he's done? He's given me his ribs, his neck, his groin. He's given me everything. He's exposed himself. He's made himself vulnerable. What kind of a strong statement is that? So we don't want to provoke. And we don't want, relatedly, to make enemies. No. The very simple principles of martial arts. Don't make enemies. Don't fixate on the narrow. Look in the big picture. Would have helped us all avoid the disastrous scenario of Iraq. Those guys played old-style, narrow, rigid, macho, and look at the consequences. I better stop. Okay.
Shall we see a couple minutes of this, and then we'll...
Something remarkable happened here with these different participants from all these different areas. And I'll have to tell you, I'm not surprised because there's something inherent in the core of Aikido. If you approach it in the correct way and you bring this ethic to the foreground, that really brings people's humanity to the foreground. And what I mean by that is that it calls on you, it actually requires that you start to see somebody else as a human being. Not as a religion, not as a caste, not as a color, not as a creed, to really see them as a human being. Because there's a way that you're required to have some kind of contact with them and be able to merge or blend with them. So the art itself is an extraordinary kind of vehicle.
مرحبا أنا اسمي علاء حجازي أنا من الأردن. My name is Alaa Hijazi. I'm Jordanian of Palestinian origin. What we have in the Middle East is it's total chaos. It's a volcano and it's not about to erupt, it's always erupting. As an Arab, as a national, kind of made me a skeptic about this whole project, this whole training across borders. The reason that made me consider it is that I was taught Aikido in a classical, harmonious way to appreciate not just the techniques, but to appreciate the difference that the technique might make in my being. How to superimpose the technique and its philosophy on my instinctive reactions or instinctive feelings.
My name is Ola, and I'm training in Jerusalem, in Israel. When I heard about the seminar, it was like, wow, that's a great opportunity. 4 days of studies, being with the great people, doing Aikido, having fun. But it just was so much more than I thought of it.
I started Aikido as fighting or something like that, but when I entered, it teaches me something else. It teaches me patience, teaches me discipline, respect, responsibility. You know, we have been close for so long time, as a part of the Aiki extension, we hope to have outreaching to others and others outreaching to us, other people, other cultures, other ideas, to help our situation in Iraq and improve Aikido in Iraq.
My name is Jamie Zimran, and I've been training in Aikido for 30 years. I'm Jewish, and I'm a dual American-Israeli citizen. It was, to me, the most natural thing was to try to bring Israelis and Palestinians together through Aikido, the art of peace, and where we actually grab each other's wrists and hands and move our bodies around together in a way that's seeking harmonious resolution of conflict. And that harmonious feeling is very transformative, and that's exactly what happened here this weekend.
We chose Cyprus for two reasons. One was that with respect to the Arab-Israeli conflict, it was a neutral place. And the other was that it was itself a highly conflicted place, and being the only militarily divided city in Europe now, had a kind of resonance with the division in Jerusalem and throughout the Israeli-Palestine area.
The Mideast Aikido project and the training across borders is really geared towards two basic things. The first one is, and what is most apparent to the public and the Aikido community, is the notion of upgrading the Aikido training here. So bringing in experienced teachers and then helping to raise that level. But the meaning underneath it, and what's really, really exciting about this, is the notion that these citizens of these countries that are in conflict with each other, they actually get together with each other, train, expand their level of conversation, and begin to confront their own notion of seeing these people as enemies and seeing them as other human beings.
At this seminar, everybody is doing something for the first time, which is not technique. And when I went outside and asked my colleagues and students, and they said this experience was amazing for us, and it's really worth the travel from Iraq via Syria, then to Jordan, and then to Cyprus. It was a really, really, really fantastic experience for us.
It was about people, not just Jews, Arabs, Serbians, or something like that. We didn't feel that way. I didn't feel that way, and I didn't receive this from them.
We accomplished this in this 3.5 days by, number one, is that we just simply had everybody together on the mat, and we said to them, we highly recommend that you change partners, training with everybody. So we had people really mix it up. We also had a lot of social events, like dinners with all these people together and they're having fun. And we have, you might call it entertainment night, where everybody comes and they supply that entertainment or songs or dances from their countries.
Several of the people said this has got to be the first time ever that such an event took place. That's the dancing last night and the camaraderie of these people who otherwise, at the outset of the seminar, openly expressed that they hated each other.
The other thing we did is every day we had a minimum of 3 separate workshops. And the workshops were in people who've explicitly taken the principles of Aikido. In fact, sometimes actually taken Aikido itself out into the world and achieved great success in it.
For example, Kurt Bartlett of Switzerland uses Aikido in psychotherapeutic work with young people. Another workshop leader was Paul Linden, who has invented a set of practices he calls embodied peacefulness. Richard Strozzi Heckler gave a workshop on leadership training. We had quite an interesting workshop presented by Jose Bueno of Sao Paulo, Brazil, who has taken Aikido into the favela slums of Sao Paulo.
And we began to build a sensibility, not just that they can twist a wrist here or fall down this way or put somebody in a chokehold, for example, but what do these things have to do with the daily conflicts that we are in our life?
The main thing of this seminar wasn't this material part of Aikido, this body part of Aikido, it was something else. A connection between people and this dimension of humanity in Aikido. And this is the important part of Aikido, which most of us forget to practice and forget to teach our students. Because of that, these seminars and this type of Aikido meeting is very important and must be continued to spread over the world.
The old me will definitely find a way to sink in, but hopefully some remnants of what I've experienced here will be there. I'm hoping that whatever change that I myself will develop into will only be mutual between me and my Israelis and my fellow Jordanians, my fellow Arabs.
I think it was the universal experience of the participants that this was an enormously powerful event. All of them felt so energized and going around the circle at the end saying what was most on their minds. So many of them said hope, that this gave a bit of hope to people who otherwise were living in chronically hopeless situations.
What I see possible here is that this time next year, that a great deal of these people and other people will be training again. And in that training, it's not just the fulfillment of us coming back together as friends, but people have these stories of, this just really widened my relationships with so many different people that I never thought I would have before. People who previously I thought were my enemies or my governments that I couldn't relate to. So that's what I hope for. Not just that we're back together again, but something happens in this year. And it happens in the Aikido community, of course, but that circle just becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. You know, I'm not messianic about this, but I'm passionate about it. And I'm simply passionate about it because I see that it works.
To the dojo. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking Don and Lee. Discussion to be continued as we thank the folks who placed these mats on this lovely ground and will now move them to the dojo. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here. Thank you, Don. To be continued.
Do they know where they can get books if they want them?
Yes, if you want books, ladies and gentlemen, Twilight Hall. That's me, Miller Lane. Come get them. I'll have them. Hello, Andrew. Nice to see you.